The stagecoach lurched to a halt in front of Nathan Warner's ranch house on a blistering August afternoon in 1882. And when the door opened, the woman who stepped out looked nothing like the photograph he had been sent 6 months earlier from the marriage broker in San Francisco. Nathan stood on the porch of his sprawling ranch just outside Golden, Colorado, hat in hand, watching as the driver helped the young woman down. She wore a dark traveling dress covered in trail dust, her black hair pinned up beneath a simple bonnet, and when she turned to face him, her eyes were the color of warm honey in the late afternoon sun. She was beautiful, more beautiful than any photograph could have captured. But as their eyes met across the dusty yard, he saw something flicker across her face that made his stomach tighten with apprehension. The driver handed down a small trunk and a carpet bag, tipped his hat, and climbed back onto the stage without ceremony. Nathan approached slowly, trying to remember the phrases he had practiced. The marriage broker had assured him that Sofia Hernandez spoke some English, enough to get by, enough to build a life together. "Miss Hernandez," he said, extending his hand. "Welcome to Colorado. I am Nathan Warner." She looked at his outstretched hand, then back at his face, and spoke a rapid stream of words he could not understand. Not broken English, not hesitant English, nothing resembling English at all. The language flowed from her lips like water over stones, musical and completely incomprehensible. Nathan felt his face flush. "I am sorry. I do not understand." She tried again, slower this time, gesturing to herself and then to the ranch house, her expression earnest and questioning. He caught one word that sounded like it might be his name but mangled beyond recognition by her accent. "Let me get your bags," he said, knowing she would not understand but needing to fill the uncomfortable silence. He picked up her trunk, surprised by its weight, and gestured toward the house. She followed, clutching her carpet bag to her chest like a shield. Inside, the ranch house was clean but sparse. Nathan had spent the better part of a week scrubbing floors and washing windows, wanting to make a good impression. He had even picked wildflowers and put them in a jar on the kitchen table. Sofia stopped in the doorway, taking it all in with wide eyes. She said something soft under her breath, and though he did not understand the words, the tone seemed approving. He set her trunk down near the stairs that led to the 2 bedrooms upstairs. "Your room is up there," he said, pointing. "The one on the right, I will take the left." She looked where he pointed, then back at him, confusion evident on her face. He realized she had probably expected something different. They were married, after all, or would be once the circuit preacher came through town next month. The proxy marriage in San Francisco was legal enough, but Nathan was a traditional man. He wanted a proper ceremony, and more than that, he wanted Sofia to choose to be his wife, not just accept it because papers said so. "You sleep there," he said, pointing again to the right side of the upstairs. "I sleep there." He pointed left. Understanding dawned in her eyes, followed by something that might have been relief. She nodded and spoke a single word that he thought might mean thank you. That first night was awkward beyond measure. Nathan cooked supper, simple fare of beans and salt pork and cornbread, and they sat across from each other at the small kitchen table in near silence. Sofia picked at her food, and he wondered if she disliked his cooking, or if she was simply too nervous to eat. He tried several times to make conversation, but each attempt fell flat when met with her uncomprehending stare. After supper, she helped him clear the dishes without being asked, and he was grateful for that small gesture. She washed while he dried, and in the quiet rhythm of that domestic task, some of the tension eased. When she handed him a plate, their fingers brushed and she pulled back as if burned. He pretended not to notice. That night, Lying in his narrow bed and listening to the floorboards creak in the room next to his, Nathan stared at the ceiling and wondered what he had gotten himself into. He had written to the marriage broker out of loneliness, plain and simple. At 32 years old, he had spent the last decade building his ranch from nothing, and now that it was thriving, he wanted someone to share it with. The broker had assured him that Sofia was a good woman, hardworking, and eager to start a new life in America. The broker had lied about her speaking English, or Sofia had lied to the broker. Either way, Nathan was now responsible for a woman he could not talk to. The next morning, he woke before dawn as always and went downstairs to find Sofia already in the kitchen, a fire burning in the stove. She had found his coffee pot and was attempting to make coffee, though from the smell, it was going to be strong enough to strip paint. She turned when she heard him on the stairs, and he saw worry flash across her face. "Good morning," he said. She responded with words he did not understand, gesturing to the coffee pot with an apologetic expression. He smiled to show it was all right and took over, adding more water to the grounds. While the coffee boiled, he watched her move around his kitchen, noting how she examined everything with careful curiosity. She was trying to learn, he realized, trying to understand her new home. Over the next few days, they developed a halting system of communication through gestures and pointing. Nathan would touch an object and say its English name. Sofia would repeat it with varying degrees of success, then tell him the word in her language. He learned that Spanish was what she spoke, though it sounded different from the Spanish he had heard from the few Mexican ranch hands who had passed through Golden. She was from Argentina, he gathered from her attempts at explanation, which meant she had traveled thousands of miles to be here. On the fourth day, Nathan realized he needed help. After breakfast, he gestured for Sofia to come with him, and they rode together into Golden proper, her sitting side saddle behind him on his horse Copper. She had been nervous about riding at first, but after a few moments she relaxed against his back, her arms wrapped around his waist. Nathan tried not to think about how right that felt. Golden was a small but growing town, benefiting from the mining operations in the nearby mountains and the railroad that had come through 2 years prior. Nathan tied Copper to the post outside the general store and helped Sofia down. Her hand lingered in his for just a moment before she pulled away. Inside, they found Mrs. Patterson behind the counter, a kindly woman in her 50s who ran the store with her husband. "Nathan Warner," she said with a warm smile, "and this must be your bride. Welcome, dear." Sofia smiled uncertainly and spoke a greeting in Spanish. Mrs. Patterson's eyebrows rose. "Oh my, she does not speak English." "No, madam," Nathan said. "I was hoping you might know someone in town who speaks Spanish, someone who could help us communicate." Mrs. Patterson thought for a moment. "The Morales family, over on the east side of town. Diego Morales works at the lumber mill. I believe he came from Mexico originally. He might be able to help." Nathan thanked her and bought a few supplies he did not really need, including a slate and some chalk. If they could not speak to each other, perhaps they could write. On the ride back to the ranch, he felt Sofia trembling against his back and realized she was crying silently. He pulled Copper to a stop in the shade of a cottonwood tree and dismounted, then helped her down. "What is wrong?" he asked, knowing she would not understand but needing to ask anyway. She wiped at her eyes and spoke rapidly, her voice breaking. He caught a few words he thought he recognized from the past few days, but the meaning escaped him. Frustrated and feeling helpless, he did the only thing he could think of. He pulled out his handkerchief and gently wiped her tears. "It will be all right," he said softly. "I promise. We will figure this out." She looked up at him, and for a moment something passed between them. understanding, perhaps, or just the shared acknowledgement of their difficult situation. She took the handkerchief from his hand and dried her eyes properly, then spoke a single word he had heard her say before. "Gracias." "You are welcome," he replied. That evening, Nathan rode back into town alone, leaving Sofia at the ranch. He found the Morales house without much difficulty, a small but well-kept home with a garden out front. Diego Morales answered his knock, a man in his 40s with graying hair and cautious eyes. Nathan explained his situation, and Diego's expression softened. "I will help you," he said. "My English is not perfect, but it is better than nothing." "I appreciate it more than you know," Nathan said, "but I also wanted to ask you something else. Would you be willing to teach me Spanish?" Diego looked surprised. "You want to learn her language? She is the one who traveled all this way," Nathan said. "The least I can do is meet her halfway." Diego smiled for the first time. "You are a good man, Nathan Warner. Come by tomorrow evening after supper. Bring your wife. We will sort this out." The next evening, Nathan and Sofia rode together into town again. This time, when they arrived at the Morales house, Sofia's entire demeanor changed. The moment Diego spoke to her in Spanish, her face lit up like sunrise and words poured out of her in a torrent. Diego listened, nodding, occasionally asking questions while Nathan stood to the side feeling useless. Finally, Diego turned to him. "She says she is sorry. The marriage broker told her you spoke Spanish. She thought you were pretending not to understand because you were angry that she is not pretty enough." Nathan felt his jaw drop. "Not pretty enough. She is the most beautiful woman I have ever seen." Diego translated, and Sofia's cheeks flushed pink. She spoke again, softer this time. "She says thank you," Diego relayed. "She wants to know if you still want to marry her now that you know she cannot speak English." "Tell her yes," Nathan said without hesitation. "Tell her I would be honored to be her husband." As Diego translated, Nathan watched Sofia's face. Her eyes grew bright with unshed tears, and she nodded, speaking words that Diego translated as, "I will try to be a good wife." "And I will try to be a good husband," Nathan said, starting with learning to speak to her properly. That night was the first of many lessons. Diego proved to be a patient teacher, and Nathan was a motivated student. They started with simple words and phrases. Buenos dias for good morning. Buenas noches for good night. Como estas for how are you. Nathan wrote everything down on his slate, practicing the pronunciation until his tongue felt twisted. Sofia watched these lessons with something like wonder in her eyes. On the ride home that first night, she said something to him in Spanish, slow and clear. He recognized two words from his lesson, gracias and hombre bueno, good man. She thought he was a good man. The weeks that followed fell into a pattern. Nathan rose before dawn to tend to his cattle and horses, while Sofia managed the house and garden. She was an excellent cook, he discovered, capable of turning his simple ingredients into meals that made his mouth water. In the evenings, they would ride into town for lessons with Diego, and Nathan would practice his halting Spanish while Sofia began to pick up a few words of English. Communication improved by inches. Nathan learned to say "está deliciosa" when he enjoyed her cooking, and her smile made the effort of learning worthwhile. She learned to say thank you without the Spanish accent, and good morning and good night. They learned each other's routines and habits, moving around each other in the house with increasing ease. But Nathan wanted more than ease. He wanted to know Sofia. Who was she before she came to Colorado? What did she dream about? What made her laugh? One evening, about 6 weeks after her arrival, they sat on the porch after supper watching the sun set over the mountains. Nathan had been practicing a longer phrase all day, checking his pronunciation with the notes from Diego. His heart hammered as he turned to her and spoke carefully in Spanish. "Tell me about your home, about Argentina." Sofia's eyes widened in surprise, and then her face transformed with joy. She began to speak, slowly at first, checking to make sure he understood. She told him about growing up on the pampas, the endless grasslands where her father had raised cattle. She told him about her mother, who had died when Sofia was 16, and her father who had died 2 years later, leaving her alone with no family and no prospects. A distant cousin had suggested the marriage broker as a solution to her poverty, and desperate, she had agreed. Nathan understood perhaps half of what she said, but he listened intently, asking Diego later to help him with the words he had missed. The next evening, he told her about his own life, about growing up in Missouri and heading west after his parents died of fever, about building this ranch from nothing with his own 2 hands. As summer faded into autumn, their conversations grew longer and more complex. Nathan's Spanish improved rapidly, though Sofia often laughed at his pronunciation. Her laughter was a sound he had grown to love, light and free. Her English progressed more slowly, but she was trying, and he admired her determination. They still slept in separate rooms, though Nathan found himself lying awake at night, thinking about the wall between them. The circuit preacher was due to come through Golden in October for their official wedding ceremony, and Nathan found himself both eager for and nervous about that day. He had grown to care for Sofia deeply over these months, more than care. He was falling in love with her quick smile and her stubborn independence, with the way she hummed while she cooked, and the way she talked to his horses in Spanish. But did she feel the same? Or did she see this marriage as simply an arrangement, a practical solution to her circumstances? One evening in late September, Nathan came back to the house after working with a difficult horse all afternoon. He was covered in dust and frustrated, and he must have shown it on his face because Sofia took one look at him and asked in careful English, "What is wrong?" He sank into a chair at the kitchen table and answered in Spanish without thinking, "That bay mare. She will not settle. I am losing patience with her." Sofia poured him coffee and sat down across from him. "Tell me about the horse," she said in Spanish. So he did, explaining the mare's skittishness, how she had been mistreated by a previous owner and now trusted no one. Sofia listened, and when he finished, she said something that made him look up in surprise. "Like me," she said. "I was afraid too, but you were patient. You gave me space. You learned my language instead of forcing me to learn yours. Maybe the horse needs the same patience." Nathan stared at her, seeing the wisdom in her words. "You are not afraid anymore." She met his eyes, and he saw something in them that made his heart race. "Not of you, not anymore." The next day, he brought Sofia out to the corral to meet the bay mare. The horse shied away at first, but Sofia spoke to her in soft Spanish, the same gentle words she probably used with everything she wanted to calm. Slowly, carefully, she approached the mare with a handful of oats. It took nearly an hour, but eventually, the horse ate from her hand. Nathan watched, amazed. "You have a gift," Sofia smiled. "You gave me the gift first, kindness, patience. Now I give it to your horse." That night, lying in bed, Nathan made a decision. Tomorrow he would tell Sofia how he felt, not in broken Spanish or fumbling English, but clearly and honestly. Diego could help him translate if needed, but he had to tell her. Life was too short and too uncertain not to. But the next morning, everything changed. Nathan was in the barn when he heard the sound of hoofbeats approaching fast. He stepped out to see 3 riders coming up the road to his ranch, and his hand instinctively went to the rifle he kept near the door. Strangers meant trouble more often than not in these parts. The men pulled up in front of the house. and Nathan got a good look at them. Rough types with hard eyes and trail dust covering clothes that had seen better days. The one in front, a lean man with a scar across his cheek, smiled without warmth. "Morning," the man said. "Name's Cole. We are looking for work. Heard you might be hiring ranch hands." Nathan had not advertised for help, and these men knew it. "Not at the moment," he said carefully, "but the Hawkins Ranch about 10 miles south might be." "That is a shame," Cole said, his eyes drifting toward the house. "That is a mighty nice place you have got here." Nathan's grip tightened on his rifle. "I appreciate you stopping by, but I have work to do." The men did not move. Cole's smile widened. "Saw smoke from the chimney. You have got someone cooking in there, maybe a wife." Before Nathan could answer, the front door opened and Sofia stepped out onto the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. She froze when she saw the strangers, and Nathan saw fear flash across her face. "My wife," Nathan said firmly, "and she is busy, so I will ask you gentlemen to move along." Cole tipped his hat in Sofia's direction. "Madam, you are a lucky woman, married to a man with such a fine ranch." Nathan stepped forward, putting himself between the riders and the porch. "I will not ask again." Something dangerous flickered in Cole's eyes, but after a long moment he nodded. "No offense intended, friend. We will be on our way." The three men turned their horses and rode off, but Nathan watched them until they disappeared over the ridge. His instincts, honed by years of living on the frontier, were screaming that this was not over. He turned to find Sofia still standing on the porch, her face pale. "Go inside," he said in Spanish. "Lock the doors." She understood the tone, if not all the words, and disappeared into the house. Nathan heard the bolt slide home and allowed himself a moment of relief before heading to the barn. He needed to check on his horses and cattle, make sure nothing had been disturbed. But more than that, he needed to think. Those men would be back. Men like that always came back when they thought they had found easy prey. Nathan needed help, and he needed it fast. He saddled Copper and rode hard into Golden, straight to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Tom Bradshaw was a good man, honest and fair, but he was also practical. When Nathan explained the situation, Bradshaw nodded grimly. "I know of Cole and his gang," the sheriff said. "They have been working their way through Colorado, hitting isolated ranches, stealing livestock, sometimes worse. I will send my deputy out to keep watch, but Nathan, you need more than that. You need men you can trust." "I am not leaving Sofia alone," Nathan said. "Not for a second." "Then get some neighbors together. Set up a watch. These men operate by intimidation. If they see you are prepared, they might move on." Nathan thanked the sheriff and headed straight to the Morales house. Diego listened to his explanation, his expression growing more serious by the moment. "I will help," Diego said immediately. "And I know others who will too. We will organize a watch rotation." "I need to get back to Sofia," Nathan said. "She is alone and scared." "Go," Diego said. "I will gather men and send them to your ranch by nightfall." Nathan rode back faster than he had left, his heart not settling until he saw the ranch house intact, smoke still rising from the chimney. He burst through the door, perhaps too roughly, because Sofia jumped up from the table with a small cry. "It is me," he said quickly in Spanish. "You are safe." "I am here." She crossed the room to him, and before he could think about what he was doing, he pulled her into his arms. She came willingly, pressing her face against his chest, and he felt her trembling. He held her, one hand stroking her back, murmuring reassurances in mixed English and Spanish. "I will not let anything happen to you," he said. "I promise." She pulled back enough to look up at him, and he saw tears on her cheeks. "I am afraid," she said in Spanish. "Those men, they looked at me like I was something to steal." "Over my dead body," Nathan said, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. This woman in his arms had become more precious to him than his ranch, than his horses, than his own life. She searched his face, and whatever she saw there made her expression soften. She touched his cheek with one hand, gentle as a whisper. "Nathan," she said, just his name, but it sounded like a prayer. He wanted to kiss her. God, how he wanted to kiss her. But before he could gather his courage, the sound of approaching horses made them both tense. Nathan pushed Sofia behind him and grabbed his rifle, but when he looked out the window, relief flooded through him. Diego was riding up with 5 other men, all armed. Over the next several days, the watch rotation kept the ranch under constant guard. Cole and his gang were spotted twice, circling the property but never coming close with so many armed men present. Nathan barely slept, catching only a few hours here and there while others stood watch. Sofia kept everyone fed, cooking huge pots of stew and endless batches of bread. The men who stayed to guard the ranch were charmed by her, despite the language barrier, and Nathan felt a fierce pride in her resilience. She had every right to fall apart under the pressure, but instead she rose to meet it. On the 4th night, Cole and his gang made their move. They came under cover of darkness, 6 of them now instead of 3, trying to stampede Nathan's cattle. But the guards were ready. Shots rang out in the night, and Nathan rushed from the house to join the fight, ordering Sofia to stay inside with the rifle. The battle was brief but intense. Cole and his men, finding themselves outnumbered and outgunned, retreated quickly. One of them took a bullet to the shoulder, and in the morning light, Nathan and the others followed a blood trail east toward the mountains. They found the gang's camp abandoned, the wounded man gone, and signs that they had packed up in a hurry. Sheriff Bradshaw arrived at noon with news. Got a telegram from the next county over. Cole and his gang were spotted heading toward Kansas. Seems they decided Colorado was not healthy for them anymore. The danger had passed. Slowly, life returned to normal. The neighbors who had helped guard the ranch went home with Nathan's heartfelt thanks. Diego returned to his regular work, though he and Nathan had become good friends through the ordeal, bound by more than just language lessons now. But something had changed between Nathan and Sofia. They were more aware of each other now, the careful distance they had maintained eroded by fear and relief. Nathan caught her watching him sometimes, her expression thoughtful, and he knew she caught him watching her too. October arrived with a cold snap that painted the aspen trees gold. The circuit preacher came to Golden on schedule, and on a crisp Saturday afternoon, Nathan and Sofia stood before him in the small church and spoke their vows. Nathan's Spanish had improved enough that he could promise to love and cherish her in her own language, and when he did, he saw her eyes fill with tears. Sofia spoke her vows in halting English, stumbling over the words but getting through them with determination. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Nathan cupped her face in his hands and kissed her for the first time. It was gentle and sweet, and when they pulled apart, Sofia was smiling. The reception was held at the church hall, attended by what felt like half the town. Mrs. Patterson had organized the food, and there was music and dancing. Nathan danced with his bride, holding her close and thinking about how much his life had changed in just a few months. That night, they returned to the ranch as the sun was setting. Nathan helped Sofia down from the wagon, and they stood together in the yard for a moment, looking at the house. Their house now, truly. "Are you nervous?" he asked in Spanish. She thought about it, then shook her head. "No, are you?" "Terrified," he admitted, and she laughed. They went inside together, and for the first time, they climbed the stairs to the same bedroom. Nathan had moved his things into the larger room on the right, the one that had been Sofia's. He had put fresh sheets on the bed and even found some dried lavender to leave on the pillow. Sofia saw it and turned to him with such tenderness in her eyes that his breath caught. "You are a good man, Nathan Warner," she said in Spanish. "The best man I have ever known." "You make me want to be better," he replied. She reached up and began unbuttoning his shirt, her fingers steady despite the blush rising in her cheeks. Nathan covered her hands with his, stilling them. "We do not have to rush," he said. "We have time." "I do not want to wait any more," she said, meeting his eyes. "I love you. I think I have loved you since you wiped my tears under the cottonwood tree." Nathan felt his heart swell until he thought it might burst. "I love you too, so much I cannot find words in any language big enough to hold it." She smiled and finished unbuttoning his shirt. "Then show me instead." And he did, with gentle hands and whispered words in 2 languages, showing her with his touch what his vocabulary could not express. They came together with tenderness and growing passion, learning each other's bodies the way they had learned each other's words, with patience and care and joy. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the darkness, Sofia's head on Nathan's chest, his fingers trailing through her long hair. "Tell me about the first time you saw me," she said sleepily in Spanish. "I thought you were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen," he said. "And then you spoke, and I could not understand a single word, and I thought my heart would break." "I was so afraid," she admitted. "I thought you would send me back." "Never," he said fiercely. "You are mine now, and I am yours, and nothing will change that." She tilted her head up to kiss him, soft and sweet. "Teach me more English," she murmured. "I want to tell you I love you in your language too." So there in the darkness, wrapped in each other's arms, they traded words like gifts. He taught her to say, "I love you," and forever and always. She taught him words he had not yet learned, beautiful Spanish words for things he had never thought to name. The seasons turned, and their life together settled into a rhythm as natural as breathing. Nathan continued his Spanish lessons with Diego, though less frequently now that he could hold proper conversations with Sofia. Her English improved too, though she still preferred Spanish, and Nathan had to admit he preferred it too. There was something intimate about speaking her language, like sharing a secret with her. Winter came hard and fast that year, burying the ranch under 3 feet of snow by December. Nathan and Sofia spent long evenings by the fire, him reading to her from books in both languages, her sewing or knitting while they talked. They made plans for the spring, for expanding the ranch, for building a larger barn. And children. Sofia asked one night, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. "Do you want children?" Nathan pulled her closer, his hand covering hers. "More than anything, do you?" "Yes," she said. "I want to fill this house with babies who speak both our languages, who have your kind heart and my stubbornness." He laughed. "Poor children with your stubbornness. They will run me ragged." "You love my stubbornness," she said, poking him in the ribs. "I love everything about you," he said honestly. In February, Sofia's suspicions were confirmed by the doctor in Golden. She was pregnant, due in late summer. Nathan whooped with joy when she told him, picking her up and spinning her around until she laughed and begged him to put her down. "We are having a baby," he kept saying, wonder in his voice. "A baby." "Maybe 2, Sofia said. "Twins run in my family." Nathan's eyes went wide. 2, God help me. But he was grinning, and Sofia knew he was as happy as she had ever seen him. That night, he put his hand on her belly and spoke to their child in Spanish, telling them how loved they were already, how much he and Sofia wanted them. Spring arrived with a rush of snowmelt and new grass. Sofia's belly swelled, and Nathan fussed over her like a mother hen, barely letting her lift a finger. She complained about being treated like an invalid, but secretly, she loved his attention. Diego and his wife Carmen came to visit often, and Carmen helped Sofia prepare for the baby, teaching her to make diapers and tiny gowns. The women of Golden threw Sofia a party, showering her with gifts and advice. Sofia's English was good enough now that she could understand most of what was said, though she still struggled with some phrases. In August, on a sweltering afternoon when the cicadas sang in the cottonwood trees, Sofia went into labor. Nathan rode like the devil was chasing him to fetch the midwife, then paced the downstairs like a caged animal while Sofia labored upstairs. Carmen stayed with her, offering encouragement in Spanish. It was a long night, but as dawn broke over the mountains, a baby's cry filled the house. Nathan nearly fell over himself running up the stairs. The midwife met him at the door with a smile. "You have a son," she said. "A big, healthy boy." Nathan entered the room to find Sofia propped up in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle. She looked up at him with tears of joy streaming down her face. "Come meet your son," she said in Spanish. Nathan crossed to the bed and looked down at the baby in awe. His son. He had a son. The baby had a shock of dark hair like Sofia's and was red-faced from crying, but to Nathan, he was the most perfect thing ever created. "What should we name him?" Sofia asked. They had discussed names for months, unable to agree, but looking at his son now, Nathan knew. "Samuel," he said. "After my father. Samuel Diego, to honor Diego for bringing us together." Sofia smiled through her tears. "Samuel Diego Warner. It is perfect." Samuel was a good baby, though he had Sofia's stubborn streak and Nathan's tendency to wake before dawn. As he grew, he babbled in a mix of English and Spanish, not caring which language he used as long as he was heard. Nathan and Sofia delighted in every milestone, every new word, every small achievement. When Samuel was 2, Sofia became pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, and in the spring of 1886 they welcomed a daughter. They named her Alina Rose, and she had Nathan's blue eyes and Sofia's dark curls. The ranch prospered as the family grew. Nathan hired help, good men who treated Sofia with respect and loved the children. The house that had once seemed so empty now rang with laughter and the sound of children's feet on the stairs. Sofia had become a fixture in Golden's small community, her cooking famous at church socials, and her kindness appreciated by everyone who knew her. She still spoke with an accent in English, and Nathan still stumbled over his Spanish sometimes, but it did not matter. They had learned to communicate in the most important language of all, love. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Nathan took Sofia to the cottonwood tree where he had dried her tears so long ago. It was summer again, the same season she had arrived, and the memories of that confused, frightened time seemed like they belonged to different people. "You remember?" he asked, gesturing to the tree. "I remember thinking I had made a terrible mistake," Sofia said, smiling, "coming so far to marry a man who could not speak to me. And now," she took his hand, threading her fingers through his, "now I think it was the best decision I ever made." "You learned my language, Nathan. Not just Spanish, but the language of patience and kindness and love. You taught me what it means to be truly seen, truly known. You taught me what it means to put someone else first," he said, "to fight for something bigger than myself. Everything I have, everything I am is better because of you." They kissed under the cottonwood tree as the afternoon sun filtered through the leaves, and in that moment, Nathan reflected on the journey that had brought them here. It had not been easy. There had been fear and confusion and danger. But there had also been laughter and discovery, and a love that grew stronger with every passing day. That evening, they returned to the ranch to find Samuel and Alina playing in the yard under the watchful eye of Maria, the young woman they had hired to help with the children. Samuel came running the moment he saw them, his face streaked with dirt and his grin wide. "Papa, Mama, look what I found." He held up a rock he clearly thought was special, launching into an explanation in rapid Spanish. Nathan knelt down to admire the treasure properly while Sofia scooped up Alina, who immediately began chattering in her own toddler mix of both languages. The family went inside together as the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Later that night, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Nathan and Sofia sat on the porch as they often did. The stars were bright overhead, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. "Tell me what you are thinking," Sofia said, leaning against his shoulder. Nathan wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "I am thinking about how lucky I am. 5 years ago, I was alone on this ranch, building something but not really knowing why. And then you stepped off that stagecoach and suddenly everything made sense. I was so scared," Sofia remembered. "Everything was strange and new, and I could not make you understand me. But I tried," Nathan said, "and you met me halfway." "You did more than try," Sofia corrected. "You changed your whole life to make room for mine. You learned my language when you could have demanded I learn yours. You gave me space when you could have demanded your rights as a husband. You showed me what real love looks like." Nathan tilted her face up to his, seeing in her eyes the same love he felt overwhelming his heart. "I would do it all again," he said. 1,000 times over I would choose you." "And I would choose you," she whispered. They sat together as the night deepened, talking quietly in Spanish about their dreams for the future. They wanted more children, at least 1 or 2 more. They wanted to expand the ranch, maybe buy the property to the east. They wanted to grow old together, to see their children grow up and have children of their own. The years that followed brought both joy and challenges. A drought one summer tested the ranch's resources, and Nathan worked himself to exhaustion keeping the cattle alive. Sofia stood by him, never complaining about the hardships, always finding ways to stretch their supplies further. When Samuel was 6 and Alina 4, they welcomed another son, Thomas Gabriel. And 2 years later, their family was completed with the birth of another daughter, Isabella Carmen, named for Sofia's mother and the woman who had become her closest friend in Golden. 4 children filled the house with noise and chaos, and more love than Nathan had ever imagined possible. He taught his sons to ride and rope and care for the land, while Sofia taught all the children to cook and garden and speak Spanish as fluently as English. The Warner children were known in Golden for being polite, hardworking, and completely bilingual. Diego and Carmen remained close friends throughout the years, their own children growing up alongside the Warner kids. The two families celebrated holidays together, mixing traditions from Argentina and Mexico and America into something uniquely their own. As the children grew older, Nathan and Sofia grew closer still. The passion of their early years had settled into something deeper and more enduring, a love that had been tested by time and hardship and emerged stronger for it. They still danced in the kitchen when they thought the children were not watching. They still spoke to each other in Spanish when they wanted privacy. They still laughed together over small things and supported each other through big ones. One winter evening when Samuel was 16 and getting ready to take over more of the ranch responsibilities, Nathan and Sofia sat by the fire while the younger children did their homework at the kitchen table. Samuel was out in the barn checking on a horse with a sore hoof, and through the window they could see the lantern light spilling out into the darkness. "He is going to be a better rancher than I ever was," Nathan said with pride. "He learned from the best," Sofia replied. She was working on a quilt, her needle moving with practiced ease. "He has your dedication and your kindness to the animals." "And your stubbornness," Nathan added with a smile. Sofia laughed. "That too. Alina wants to be a teacher, did you know? She told me today she wants to teach other children to speak multiple languages, like we taught her. She would be wonderful at that, Nathan said. She has your gift for making people feel comfortable. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to Thomas and Isabella arguing over a math problem in the kitchen. Nathan watched Sofia in the firelight, her face showing the lines of 15 years of marriage and 4 children, and he thought she had never been more beautiful. "What are you staring at?" she asked, catching him looking. "My wife," he said, "the woman who changed my life." She set down her quilting and came to sit beside him on the sofa. "We changed each other's lives," she said. "That is what love does." "You ever regret it?" he asked. Leaving Argentina, coming so far to marry a stranger, Sofia was quiet for a moment, considering the question seriously as she always did. "I regret the fear," she said finally. "I regret the loneliness of those first few weeks, but regret coming here, marrying you, never. Not for a single second of any day we have had together." Nathan kissed her, soft and lingering, tasting the coffee she had drunk after supper and the sweetness that was simply Sofia. "I love you," he said in Spanish, the words as natural to him now as breathing. "And I love you," she replied in English, her accent still present but softer now after all these years. The years continued to pass, bringing changes as years always do. Samuel married a girl from Golden and brought her to live on the ranch, building a house on the eastern section of the property. Alina went to Denver to train as a teacher, and Nathan and Sofia made the trip to visit her several times a year. Thomas showed a talent for working with horses that surpassed even Nathan's, and Isabella grew into a young woman with her mother's beauty and her father's steady nature. Through it all, Nathan and Sofia remained each other's constant. They still rode together when work allowed, exploring the mountains they both loved. They still sat on the porch in the evenings, watching the sunset and talking about everything and nothing. They still danced in the kitchen and spoke Spanish in bed and held hands under the cottonwood tree. As they grew older, their hair turning gray and their bodies moving more slowly, their love remained as strong as ever. Nathan would catch Sofia's eye across a room full of grandchildren and feel his heart skip the same way it had the first time he saw her step off that stagecoach. On their 25th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a party that brought together half the county. There was food and music and dancing and speeches that made Sofia cry and Nathan laugh. Diego, now in his 70s and moving slowly but still sharp as ever, stood up to speak. "25 years ago," Diego said, "a young rancher came to my door asking me to teach him Spanish. He said his new bride could not speak English, and he wanted to learn her language instead. I knew then that this was a man who understood what love really means. It means sacrifice. It means putting someone else's needs before your own. It means building bridges instead of demanding others cross rivers." He raised his glass. "To Nathan and Sofia Warner, may you have 25 more years of happiness together." Everyone cheered and drank, and Nathan pulled Sofia into his arms for a dance. The musicians played a slow waltz and they moved together with the ease of long practice, their bodies knowing the steps without thought. 25 years, Sofia murmured against his chest. "It feels like yesterday and forever all at once." "I know exactly what you mean," Nathan said. "Some days I look at you and still see that frightened girl stepping off the stagecoach. Other days I cannot remember a time when you were not part of my life." "We have had a good life," Sofia said. "A beautiful life." "The best," Nathan agreed. As they danced, surrounded by their children and grandchildren and friends, Nathan thought about the path that had brought them to this moment. He thought about the marriage broker's lie that had seemed like a disaster at the time, but had turned out to be a blessing. He thought about those first awkward days of pointing and gesturing, and the slow building of understanding and trust. He thought about learning Spanish, about the hours spent with Diego translating and teaching. He thought about the moment he had first been able to tell Sofia he loved her in her own language, and the way her face had lit up with joy. He thought about the danger they had faced together, and how it had forged their bond even stronger. Most of all, he thought about all the small moments in between. The quiet mornings drinking coffee together, the shared glances across the dinner table, the whispered conversations in the dark, the laughter and tears and everyday ordinary magic of building a life with someone you love. The song ended and another began, and Nathan kept dancing with Sofia because he never wanted to let her go. Around them, other couples joined in, and the floor filled with swirling dresses and happy faces. Samuel danced with his wife, their 2 children clinging to their legs. Elena danced with a young man she had met in Denver, a teacher like herself. Thomas spun Isabella around until she shrieked with laughter. The party went on late into the night, and when it finally ended and everyone had gone home, Nathan and Sofia climbed the stairs to their bedroom, the same room where they had first come together as husband and wife 25 years ago. Sofia sat at her dressing table, unpinning her hair, and Nathan came to stand behind her. He took over the task, gently removing the pins and running his fingers through the silver-streaked strands. "Thank you," Sofia said softly, meeting his eyes in the mirror. "For what? For tonight. For all of this. For choosing to love me even when it was difficult." Nathan bent and kissed the top of her head. "Loving you has never been difficult. It is the easiest thing I have ever done." She turned in her chair and pulled him down for a proper kiss. "Come to bed, husband. I want to fall asleep in your arms." They settled into bed together, Sofia curled against Nathan's side the way she had done for 25 years. Through the window, they could see stars scattered across the night sky like diamonds on velvet. "Nathan," Sofia said quietly. "Yes, my love." "If you could go back and change anything, would you?" He thought about it, really thought about it. "Not a single thing," he said finally. "Every challenge, every struggle, every moment of confusion or fear or doubt led us here. And here is exactly where I want to be." "Me too," she whispered. They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, and in the morning, they woke to a new day full of the same promises they had made to each other 25 years ago. To love, to cherish, to speak each other's language both literally and figuratively. To build a life together one day, one moment, one word at a time. The years continued their steady march forward. Nathan and Sofia celebrated their 30th anniversary, and then their 35th. Their children had children, and those children began having children of their own. The ranch expanded and prospered under Samuel's management, with Thomas running a successful horse breeding operation on the side. Elena became the principal of a school in Denver that specialized in bilingual education, carrying on the legacy of her parents' commitment to communication across languages. Isabella married a rancher from the next county and had 5 children who all learned Spanish from their grandmother. Through it all, Nathan and Sofia remained devoted to each other. They moved a bit slower now, and Nathan's hands were gnarled with arthritis, making ranch work difficult. Sofia's eyesight was not what it used to be, so she gave up quilting in favor of knitting larger projects. But their love remained as vibrant and vital as ever. On a spring morning in 1912, 30 years after Sofia had first arrived in Colorado, Nathan woke to find pale sunlight streaming through the bedroom window. Sofia was still asleep beside him, her breathing deep and even, and he took a moment to simply watch her. Even in sleep, she was beautiful to him, every line on her face a map of the life they had lived together. She stirred and opened her eyes, smiling when she saw him watching her. "Good morning," she said in Spanish, as she had every morning for 3 decades. "Good morning," he replied in the same language. "How did you sleep?" "Well, with you beside me," she said. "How could I not?" They rose slowly, helping each other dress as they had started doing in recent years. Sofia made coffee while Nathan started a fire in the stove, their movements choreographed by long practice. They sat together at the kitchen table, the same table where they had shared so many meals, and watched the sun climb higher over the mountains. "I was thinking," Sofia said, "that we should visit Alina next month. It has been too long since we made the trip to Denver." "That sounds good," Nathan agreed. "And we could stop and see Thomas and Mary on the way back. I want to see how that new colt is doing." They made their plans, talking easily about their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, about the ranch and the town and all the small details of their shared life. And as they talked, Nathan felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over him. This was what he had wanted all those years ago when he had written to the marriage broker. Not just a wife, but a partner. Not just someone to share his house, but someone to share his life. And he had found that and so much more in Sofia. She had learned English, slowly but surely, until she could communicate easily with everyone in Golden. But he had learned Spanish too, had made the effort to meet her in the middle, and that had made all the difference. It had set the tone for their entire marriage, this willingness to adapt and change and grow for each other. "What are you thinking about?" Sofia asked, catching the look on his face. "About how lucky I am," Nathan said. "About how my life could have gone so differently if you had not stepped off that stagecoach. If the marriage broker had not lied," Sofia said with a small smile. "I sometimes think I should thank him for that lie. It forced us to really communicate, to work harder at understanding each other than we might have otherwise." "I never thought of it that way," Nathan said. "But you are right. We built something stronger because we had to work for it." "We built something stronger because you were willing to work for it," Sofia corrected. "You could have sent me back. You could have demanded I adapt to you, but instead you adapted to me. You learned my language. You made me feel valued and seen and loved." Nathan reached across the table and took her hand, his weathered fingers intertwining with hers. "And you made me believe in love," he said. "Real love, the kind that lasts a lifetime, the kind that grows deeper with every passing year." They sat there holding hands across the kitchen table, two people who had started as strangers and become soulmates, and the morning sun streamed through the windows like a blessing. The months that followed were good ones. They made their trip to Denver and visited Alina, marveling at the school she had built and the children whose lives she touched. They stopped to see Thomas and admired the new colt, a beautiful bay filly that reminded Nathan of the mare Sofia had gentled so many years ago. Summer brought all of their children home for a family reunion, and the ranch house rang with laughter and life as children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren filled every room. Nathan and Sofia sat on the porch and watched the chaos with happy hearts, knowing they had built this legacy together. As autumn painted the aspen trees gold once more, Nathan and Sofia took one last ride together up to the cottonwood tree. It was harder now, getting into the saddle, and they moved slowly, but the journey was worth it. They stood beneath the tree where Nathan had dried Sofia's tears so long ago, and he pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "I love this place," Sofia said softly. "It is where I first understood that everything would be all right." "It is where I first held you," Nathan said. "Where I first felt that maybe, somehow, we could make this work." "We did more than make it work," Sofia said, turning in his arms to face him. "We built something beautiful." "We did," Nathan agreed. "The most beautiful thing I have ever been part of." They kissed beneath the cottonwood tree one last time, and then they rode slowly back to the ranch, back to the home they had made together, back to the life they had built word by word, day by day, year by year. That night, lying in bed with Sofia in his arms, Nathan reflected on the incredible journey they had shared. From that first awkward meeting, through the struggles and dangers, through the joys and sorrows, they had walked every step together. They had learned each other's languages, both the words and the deeper language of the heart. They had built a family and a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. "Sofia," he said quietly into the darkness. "Yes, my love, thank you, for saying yes to the marriage broker, for getting on that stage coach, for giving me a chance even when I could not understand a word you said, for being my wife, my partner, my greatest love." He felt her smile against his chest. "Thank you for learning Spanish," she said. "Thank you for being patient. Thank you for loving me enough to change yourself instead of demanding I change for you. Thank you for 30 years of happiness." They fell asleep like that, holding each other close, and when morning came, they woke to another day of the life they had built together. A life full of love and laughter, and the kind of deep understanding that transcends any single language. Years continued to pass, and Nathan and Sofia grew older together with grace and gratitude. They celebrated holidays surrounded by family, tended their garden, and sat on the porch watching sunsets over the mountains they both loved. And always, always, they spoke to each other in the language of love that they had built together, a blend of Spanish and English and something deeper that needed no words at all. Their story became legend in Golden, the tale of the mail-order bride who arrived speaking no English and the rancher who learned her language instead. It was a story about love and respect and the willingness to meet someone halfway. It was a story about building bridges instead of walls, about choosing understanding over convenience, about love that grows stronger with every passing year. And it was a story with a happy ending, the kind of ending that comes from two people who choose each other every single day, who work together through challenges, who celebrate joys together, and who build a life that is greater than the sum of its parts. Nathan and Sofia lived long, full lives surrounded by the love of their family and the respect of their community. And when they finally passed, years later within months of each other, they left behind a legacy of love that continued through their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all of whom spoke both English and Spanish and knew the story of how their family began with a confused meeting, a language barrier, and a rancher who chose love over ease. The ranch remained in the Warner family for generations, and the cottonwood tree where Nathan first held Sofia became a family landmark, a place where Warner descendants would bring their own loves to share the story of Nathan and Sofia, the mail-order bride and the rancher who learned her language and, in doing so, learned the true meaning of love.